Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. She's the most powerful woman in city government, the shepherdess of 51 cats. She's touted as a 2009 mayoral candidate. Madam Mayor? She's Christine Quinn, Speaker of the New York City Council. Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks.
The last time we talked was immediately after you becoming Speaker, so here we are 2.5 years later, and the headline reads, Hard Times, or In the Red. We've got a real fiscal emergency at the state level, and we've got fiscal agita here. Talk about the fiscal situation.
Well, the truth is the headlines are right. It is not a good fiscal situation. You know, we've had about 4 years of back-to-back surplus budgets. We balanced the budget that we're in now in the city of New York, myself, the mayor, and my colleagues. But even with taking $4 billion from this year's budget and prepaying next year's debts, next year's budget still is billions of dollars in the hole.
But the city is far more fiscally responsible than the state. I mean, just the accounting and the transparency and the accountability at the city level. Albany just doesn't have this.
I mean, you can't even compare the city's budgets with Albany's budgets. I mean, one point is, as a result of the fiscal crisis of the 70s, we have a balanced budget. We have no choice. We have no choice.
Does this fiscal crisis do the same at the state level? I mean, does it introduce an era of fiscal responsibility, or do we just move on?
I hope it does.
But you're not sanguine.
You know, I think we're very lucky to have David Paterson right now where he's at. And he clearly wants to find a way to change course as it relates to the state's budget.
The question out there is, does he have the ability to do it? I mean, you've got a new majority, Senate Majority Leader.
And that could change.
And that can change. You've got a different, balance in the Senate. Does he have the ability and the will to do this? What does he do? He gives a major address. What does he do?
Well, the only good thing about truly desperate times is they don't leave you with a lot of choices. And I think we are close to being in desperate times as it relates to the state's budget, and what Governor Paterson is going to have to do, working with his colleagues in Albany, is find every bit of fat that is in the state budget and cut it out. Then identify those pieces of fat that are not within his control, that are federal mandates or something of that nature, and go to Washington and ask for relief. Because the truth is, you can't go to businesses or individuals and ask them to pay more taxes until you've shown them that you've cut every bit of fat out of the budget. That's why this recent fare hike, for example, from the MTA is ridiculous. Don't come back to the fare payers, to the strap hangers, until you've cut a little overhead, a little administration. You've got a multi-billion-dollar budget and you can't find 5%? I don't think so.
And also, I mean, and in the state budget of 120 plus billion, you've got to have, is there the will? Is there the ability? Well, is there the ability? Let's not talk about will.
I certainly believe there's the ability. I mean, David Paterson is a smart guy. He's a hardworking guy. He's a guy who every turn has outpaced expectations about him. That said, there's also a lot of government professionals in Albany that we've dealt with, myself and my staff, and they have, good creative ideas. They just have to be allowed to rise to the top and have those ideas carry the day.
But does the cliche of Albany dysfunction just prevent this? The way things operate simply, how do you cut this knot?
The good thing, again, about being with your back against the wall,
you got to do something,
is you got one place to go, and it's out. Well, I guess you got two places to go, out or under. Right. And nobody's going to let New York go under.
Okay. You mentioned the MTA fare hikes. What's with them?
I think it goes kind of with the questions you were just asking. For a long time, the MTA got whatever it wanted.
Right.
It did whatever it wanted. It was like a spoiled child. And right now,
there's a lot of authorities that are like that.
That's true. Well, that's one of the problems with authorities.
Right. And that's one of the areas that the governor could have an impact on.
Absolutely, because the problem with authorities is there is no one who has authority over them. And they exist in this netherland between, government and private sector, and no one really has ultimate, the buck stops.
Who looks at it? I mean, does the Attorney General look at it? Is that where it has to go?
Well, I think Comptroller DiNapoli said over the weekend that he was going to do a major audit, if not series of audits of the MTA books. And I think that is a major step in the right direction, because it wasn't so long ago that we found out that the MTA had 2 sets of books. So an audit is the right step. I've said, the mayor has said, Speaker Silver has said, no way to a fare hike. And remember, the mayor has 4 votes on the MTA board, and Governor Patterson has clearly demonstrated tremendous skepticism about another fare hike. So again, I think it's a kind of a situation where we're pushing the MTA with its back against the wall, and it has to find, it has to cut back its overhead before it goes to
Is there enough there? Is there enough overhead there to make up these operating and what would ultimately be capital deficits?
None of us can ever say that there won't ever be another fare hike.
Right.
I mean, that would just be one of those politicians lying to voters. But there has to be steps to prevent it, to delay it. And you can't go back to fare payers when you just went to them until you've got, it's a multi-billion-dollar agency. Trust me, you could find 5%, and if you can't find 5%, then you need new managers.
Reasonable. The Ravitch Commission comes out in December.
Well, that's another
Everybody's
question.
sort of waiting on this. Also, just commissions themselves tend to be delaying tactics. Not to say that was the principal design of this. You need some analysis.
I mean, commissions and task forces can be delaying. They can also be effective. And Dick Ravitch is a smart guy.
Right.
He's a guy, I worked with him when we fought and beat the stadium. He's a guy who is not afraid, to speak truth to power. He's got no dog in this fight. He's got a good job. He doesn't need anything from anybody.
And a good rep with the MTA.
He ran it.
Right.
And helped save it at a point.
Yep.
So, look, if there's a guy who's going to tell us the real truth about the MTA, it's Dick Ravitch. That we know.
Okay. Let's just pick up a couple of issues. Term limits. I mean, there's a recent Times piece, a recent Post piece about the economic and social elites saying we need Mike Bloomberg.
Right.
Let's do away with term limits.
The Post had Mike and looked like Uncle Sam, I guess, right?
Yes, and then he wants you for a third term. Your thoughts on term limits? In fact, you were, in some senses the beneficiaries of it, and now you're going to be the victim of it. Talk about term limits in general, the extension from 8 to 12 years.
Although I certainly benefited from term limits, there's no 2 ways about that, I've always thought and still think they are a bad public policy. Ultimately, the ballot box should be term limits. And in New York, we have a very good public campaign finance program, which really, with the spending cap, comes close to leveling the playing field if all of the candidates are in the program.
Right.
That really gives us the opportunity for term limits. I think they're bad for government. You have tremendous turnover. Next year or a year and a half, we're going to have 36, 7, 8. I've lost track of how many members are going to get term limited out.
Right.
That's a constant revolving door that overly empowers staff and overly empowers lobbyists and the special interests. Minimally, I think they should have been 12 years. I really don't think we should have them at all. That said, the voters have spoken not once,
but twice,
but
93
twice.
and 96. And in 96 on extending it from 8 to 12 years, which is the current proposal. So this ain't going to happen.
I don't think so. I can't really do a brogue very well, but my father's mother used to say she was from Cork, so she had a particular...
Try.
I can't do it. She would say what's din is din and can't be undin. And that's what the situation with term limits. It's din, and I don't think it's going to be undin.
The mayor proposed in, I guess, the 2007 State of the City address, a charter revision commission.
Which is desperately needed.
Okay. Talk about that. Why is it desperately needed? And if you were the mayor or at least the chair of the commission, what would you be looking at seriously?
Well, remember, We had a major overhaul of government as a result of a Supreme Court lawsuit that led to the charter question of 1989.
Right.
Now, folks were rewriting a charter, soup to nuts.
I wrote the city council report for that commission.
So there were a lot of good things in there. But nothing's going to be perfect when you're overhauling like that. So there's a couple of key areas off the top, and we need to look more deeply. One, the mayor exclusively does the revenue projections for the city of New York.
My very next question.
Huge power.
Who does it then? The controller?
I mean, you know, I think we have to look at whether it should be.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, the answer is I don't know today who should do it.
But it shouldn't be the executive.
Not exclusively. Not exclusively.
I mean, that led to your budget conflict with the executive. The amount of money available where the executive traditionally, as a matter of strategy, understates revenues.
And interestingly, I mean, that is true. Interestingly, our forecasters are usually more correct than OMB's, in part because we forecast later, so we have more info. This year, our forecasters for the fiscal year that ended were only $100 million more than the mayor's. We were close. $100 million would have made a big difference this year. But again, that power is exclusively with them. Budget modifications, they're only initiated by the mayor. When they come to the council, we can only vote yes or no. Well, you can't vote no. Then the budget's out of balance, and the financial control board
can step in.
So it's not a real power. Don't give if you're not going to give a real power, don't give one at all. Another thing, so there's a number of different things in budget. In land use, I think there are a lot of questions. There's a huge power most New Yorkers don't know about that the City Planning Commission holds. It's when land use comes to the council and we want to make changes. The City Planning Commission decides whether the things we want to change are changeable, whether they're what's called in scope. That decision of what changes are in scope are unbelievably significant, and that shouldn't rest exclusively with the City Planning Commission.
But I got to bet if I'm the mayor, what I'm interested in changing ULURP, the Uniform Land Use Review process that takes away power from the council and the community boards and centralizes it. Wouldn't that be the thrust of an executive here?
I don't think so, because I've worked with Mike Bloomberg, for 6.5 years and really closely with him for 2.5 years. And the truth is, he's not a power grab kind of a guy. And I really believe he wants to use this Charter Revision Commission to make permanent the best government structure there can be. He's not going to agree with everything I suggest, but he is definitely not going to disregard it in some turf stupidity.
No, but I mean, clearly, isn't it almost an imperative of the executive in that situation to want to aggregate?
I don't think so.
To expand the power of the committee, irrespective of Bloomberg. Bloomberg will be gone. It's the executive as the mayor, whoever that person is.
I mean, I think it's about government.
So you think that a Charter Revision Commission will really look at the possibility of devolving more power to you guys?
Well, the Charter Revision Commission is going to have to look at a broad range of questions.
Go ahead.
Because New Yorkers are going to bring them a broad range of questions, and we're going to have people we appoint from the council to the commission. So there will be diverse voices. I really believe, and one of the things that's been great about the mayor and myself working together is we've tried hard to think about government. Not about, City Hall, people call it his side, my side. We've tried to get away from sides and actually be a building that's united. And I hope this Charter Revision Commission can take steps so whoever the next mayor and the next speaker is, they stay with the model of being a building united. And when we disagree, doing it agreeably, because it doesn't serve New Yorkers well. In a time like this, where headlines say in the red, to see politicians fighting with each other, that is the last stress New Yorkers need.
There's a charge out there that you're too close to the mayor, that, the dance got a little bit too close. Respond.
People have become accustomed in this city to, each side of City Hall giving the other side a Bronx cheer on a regular basis. That's not good for the city. It might be fun. It might be good headlines. It's not good for the city. My job is to get things done. I can't get things done alone. I need my colleagues. I need the mayor. I'm going to do what I need to do to get things done. Now, if people want to say I was too close to the mayor, and that's a criticism, well, did being too close to the mayor get 18,000 police officers new state-of-the-art bulletproof vests? Did being too close to the mayor get a commitment publicly that by 2010 every middle grade school will have Regents classes? That didn't exist until we took that to the mayor. Did being too close to the mayor expand the number of full-day pre-kindergarten slots in this city? Did being too close to the mayor bring us the first ever law on the books that allows tenants to go to housing courts when landlords are harassing them? Look, it's about getting it done. My job is to get it done, not to give people some, cat fight they can write a story about.
Okay. But in fact, you have disagreed with the mayor. I mean, on the electronic waste.
We disagreed with the mayor
on this budget, even though the mayor ultimately, given the power of the executive, forced you guys to eat all those education changes, which was, from a policy point of view, laudable, but from a political point of view, he held his ground, was intransigent, and forced you guys to use your discretionary money.
When the budget battles started, the Department of Education and the mayor were quite comfortable with taking hundreds of millions of dollars out of public schools.
Yeah.
So government is ultimately the art of compromise. And they moved off of their very firm posture that the schools could survive with hundreds of millions less. And we had a position, we wouldn't pass a budget that had cuts in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And we were going to stand by that. What was our compromise? If we meant it, we were going to pay for it. And that's ultimately came to a point where we were united in passing a budget. But the New York Post said on its editorial page over the weekend that we fought tooth and nail and won on the issue. Now, to me,
that was a very interesting editorial, by the way.
It was.
Go ahead.
It was. But to me, the important thing is that when teachers go into the classroom in September, they have the same resources they had at the end of the school year. The other thing that's really important to me is that we were able to achieve that, even though it was a disagreement, without me standing on the steps of City Hall wagging my finger at the mayor. Because what doesn't help teachers and parents is for them to think that government isn't united in their concern about them. We had a different strategy. We came together in the end. Teachers and children and parents need to know that the building, the entirety of City Hall, cares about them. And we got the job done. We compromised, but we got it done. And I will disagree with the mayor. Like you said, on electronic waste, we split the bill in two. The part he could agree with, we passed. The part he didn't agree with, we vetoed.
Right.
It's about getting it done.
Okay.
But it's also, and particularly in tough economic times, people need to feel that we're pulling for them, not having them feel like we're fighting like children.
Okay. It's often been said that the council doesn't do much, but I looked at what you guys are up to, and let me just tick some off, and you can talk about them. The food stamp data match, the cyber safety summit, construction safety. I mean, you guys passed 3 bills recently.
We've had 12 oversight hearings on the topic.
As a matter of fact, I sat in on at least 2 of them. The Environmental Control Board flip, the plastic bags, council stat, and ELL, English Language Learners. Let's talk about the food stamp data match, ELL, and whatever else you want to talk about.
The food stamp data match, to me, is something I'm very proud of because it's an example of how, without a lot of money right now, we can be smart and help people. So food stamps, a federal program that helps people get resources to buy food for themselves and their families. There's probably 1 million New Yorkers who qualify for this federal program and don't get it. That means we're leaving all this money in Washington. God knows that's the last place you want to leave any money.
Since we send $17 billion more than we get back. Thank you.
There's 1 million more New Yorkers on federal and other free health insurance programs, Medicaid, Family Health Plus. That 1 million more than there are on food stamps, even though the requirements are very similar. So we asked the mayor's office, match the 2 lists. See who's getting health insurance and isn't getting food stamps.
And this is all in cooperation with Linda Gibbs, Deputy Mayor Linda Gibbs' operation.
Correct. So Deputy Mayor Gibbs had her folks mush the lists together. We found 6...
Mush is a very technical computer.
Very technical. Clearly I wasn't the one on the button. 600,000 households get Medicaid, don't get food stamps, which means they probably could.
Right.
The biggest chunk of those, 197,844 households in the county of Queens. could get food stamps and don't. Now, each of those 600,000 households are getting letters and pamphlets in multiple languages from the administration, targeted follow-up from the administration. It's a healthcare list, so I can't get their names, but the administration can. Now, we know the zip codes. So in Corona and Elmhurst, two of the highest ones, and Flushing, the three highest in Queens, we in the council with our community partners are going to do targeted follow-up.
Nice.
So we're going to find those 600,000 people, get them enrolled. That didn't cost us practically anything, and it's going to help people.
Excellent.
Now.
Excellent.
The Cyber Safety Summit, let me mention it quickly. August 9th, City Hall, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
You can say it again.
August 9th, City Hall, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to have leading experts in the issue of cyber safety. We're going to have trainings for parents, for educators, for young people. We need to really understand the dangers that are out there.
And it's downtown.
It's at City Hall.
It's not in the, you got to move this out to the boroughs.
We do, but we need to start it there. And we're being supported in this by Microsoft and Google, so we're going to have real experts there. What we want to do, the internet is a huge, vast possibility for children to learn and grow, but we as adults need to understand this new technology so we can protect them.
Is this going to be online at some point?
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah,
we're working on all that.
Would ELL, English language learners.
You know, our schools are doing better, thank goodness, but they're not where they should be. And one place where we did not do well this year was for English language learners, kids for whom English is not their first language. Their high school graduation rate dropped this year. For us in the council for 2.5 years, supporting students who are ELL has been one of our highest priorities. This year, when we restored funding to the public schools, we also, within that, created a $7 million fund targeting schools that have a high number of high needs ELLs. Principals in those schools will now be able to get extra money to support implementation of best practices in their schools.
Excellent.
And the thing that's really significant, the definition of what are the best practices, that decision is being made by the council, the DOE, and advocates for ELL students like the Immigration Coalition at the table. So the voice of those students is there.
Excellent.
Can I talk about plastic bags real quick?
I was just going to go to plastic bags.
We passed a very smart piece of legislation that creates a plastic bag recycling program in the city of New York. So if you go to a store in your neighborhood that's 5,000 square feet or more, or a chain that has 5 branches, right now, it started last week, there should be receptacles at the doors where you can drop off your plastic bags. From any store, your dry cleaning, put it there. It's great. They'll be able to be recycled, and there's a huge market for recycled plastic. We're very proud of this. It was hailed by environmentalists. The mayor signed it into law. The state, in its infinite wisdom, passed a statewide plastic bag recycling bill. Okay, theirs is weaker than ours. Okay, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Usually when we already have a law, they exempt us. They did not exempt us.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, some people think special interests got to people. I don't know. But what we do know is we're asking Governor Patterson and legislative leaders to make a chapter amendment in the bill to exempt us, to allow us to have a stronger plastic bag recycling program. And we're actually optimistic that sometime next month that will get put in place by the state.
Excellent. We have only a couple of minutes. Let's turn to the recent unpleasantness. Where are we? Just give us a brief, rundown of what happened and where we are.
Well, what happened is, we being the council were reached out to by the U.S. Attorney's Office last fall. They were investigating something. It was probably what led to the indictment of the 2 staff members for Kendall Stewart, but we don't really know what they were looking at. In the course of us compiling the 6 or so years of information that they asked for, my staff uncovered a practice in the budget, a practice where fictitious groups had been listed in the budget. They brought that to me last fall. I had no knowledge of it.
And this had preceded you in, I guess, Gifford Miller's reign and perhaps even Peter Vallone's.
As far as we can determine, it goes back to at least 1999.
Okay, the end of Peter Vallone's service.
May have been longer, but that's what we can determine. So although this wasn't what the U.S. Attorney was investigating, when my staff told me about this, I said, you have to give that information to the U.S. Attorney. We have to tell them that, and they have to take a look at it.
So you were proactive on this?
Absolutely. I mean, we walked it right over to the U.S. Attorney and the Department of Investigations.
But then it hits the fan.
It did. I mean, then it ended up, getting into the papers. Some have asked why I didn't simultaneously walk it into the press room when we walked it over to the U.S. Attorney. When you're dealing with law enforcement investigators, they're your focus. And you give information to them, they're going to do an investigation. You don't typically then give it to reporters who their coverage of it, no disrespect, might impede their investigation. It then ended up in the paper. Obviously, people had questions. Some of the very same questions I had when the staff walked into me with this information. The investigation, continues into that. We believe it will wrap up soon, and we've taken tremendous steps in this year's budget, put in an entirely new vetting process, review process, to make sure that there is a structure in place so nothing like this ever happens again under, any future city councils. We've also gone beyond just dealing with preventing fictitious groups and really put a process in place working with the Mayor's Office of Contracts to try to check for the quality of organizations.
So maybe this is a silk purse out of a sow's ear?
Potentially, potentially. And the, a good thing here is it did beyond the fictitious groups, which I didn't know about, and as soon as we walked over to the authorities. It did cause us all to stop for a second and say, okay, the council gives away discretionary funding. How do we better check quality? How do we better review? And we're continuing to look at that and are going to continue to put reforms in place. One of the things is the reforms we put in place this year and we'll put in place next year actually build on things that we put in place year one and year two.
Okay. 2009, you've got a committee that talks about a citywide race. Now,
Yes.
there were 3 citywide offices.
Last I checked.
There's the public advocate. Would you consider running for the public advocate? No.
Probably no.
Controller?
I would never say never, but probably not likely, no.
So that leaves 1. So are we running for mayor?
We haven't made any decisions yet.
Okay. You're not going to, with no announcements on City Talk? Come on.
I love City Talk, but no announcements.
Okay, no announcements. Going back to the previous question, the recent unpleasantness, a lot of wise guys out there said that this might hurt should you choose to run for mayor. Respond.
People, if you're the mayor, the governor, the speaker, people in large and important jobs, you will come across problems. Some will be problems like this that you've inherited. Others will be problems of your own making.
Sure.
New Yorkers don't expect leaders not to have problems. What they expect is their leaders to rise to the occasion, to admit the problem, to go to those who should know about the problem, seek their help, and they expect them to find solutions in an honest way to the problems. That's what we've done. That's what we'll continue to do. So what I expect is if I run for something else, not to be judged by the problems I've had, but by whether I was able to rise to those problems and develop solutions. And whether I run for something or not, my job for 18 more months is to find solutions to this problem and the other problems New Yorkers face. I think that's what I've done, and it's what I'll continue to do, and I hope it's what people judge me by.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.